On the obsidian terraces of the alien empire's capital, the sky glowed with streaks of violet and gold, the twin suns setting beyond the crystalline spires. Inside the imperial palace, tension simmered like molten metal. Emperor Kelith had summoned the court to witness a matter of great, if humiliating, importance. The hatchling, small and pale, trembled atop a floating platform. Its scales were dull, its wings uneven, and its claws awkwardly misaligned. Court advisors whispered and smirked, each comment sharper than the next. "Useless," one said, voice dripping disdain. "How can this creature possibly inherit anything?" "Pathetic," another murmured. "Even a minor predator could outfly it." The hatchling's head drooped, large eyes blinking with confusion and fear. It tried to flap its wings, but the motion was clumsy, failing to lift it more than a few centimeters. Every failed attempt drew quiet snickers from the assembly. Kelith's claws tightened around the railing of the viewing platform, amber eyes narrowing at the whispers. "Silence!" His voice, a thunderous echo amplified by the palace chambers, hushed the murmurs instantly. But the anger in his gaze was not toward the court. It was toward the hatchling itself. "You will either learn to rise or be removed from my presence," Kelith said, his tone cold and final. "A useless heir cannot command respect. You are worthless if you cannot fly, if you cannot prove your worth." The hatchling trembled, too young and fragile to comprehend the weight of imperial expectation. Its wings twitched, but every effort ended in failure, and every failure seemed to confirm the court's whispers. Outside the palace, in the bustling streets of the capital, a young human barber named Corin prepared for his morning routine. He had been sent as part of a trade delegation centuries ago and had carved out a modest life here, running a small shop between shimmering towers. Corin was unremarkable in appearance, an ordinary human with no military rank or magical talent. But he carried a calm intelligence and a willingness to act where others hesitated, qualities that often went unnoticed in an empire built on display and power. Corin had heard the rumors. The Emperor's hatchling was being mocked, deemed useless, and its future in jeopardy. Most humans, and most aliens for that matter, would have ignored such events, recognizing that to intervene in imperial matters was suicide. But Corin felt a tug of curiosity, and perhaps a spark of justice. He packed his shears, combs, and oils, and made his way to the palace under the guise of delivering personal grooming services. The palace guards eyed him with suspicion, but the human's calm demeanor and the pretext of official duty allowed him to pass. Inside, the echoes of imperial judgment reached him. The shouts, the jeers, the tiny flaps of wings that seemed desperate in their futility. Corin entered the observation hall quietly, his eyes immediately finding the hatchling. It was small, trembling, and vulnerable, a stark contrast to the grandeur and menace surrounding it. The human knelt beside the platform, ignoring the hisses of caution from imperial guards. His hands moved with precision, touching the hatchling lightly, adjusting the angles of its wings, and carefully assessing the tension in its muscles. The court froze. An unarmed human, a barber by trade, dared to touch the Emperor's heir, a creature deemed useless by imperial decree. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some were outraged, others were incredulous. "Step back," shouted a court advisor. "You have no authority here." Corin did not move. He whispered gently to the hatchling, his voice calm and reassuring. "Easy, steady. I'll help you find your balance." His hands worked with surprising delicacy, repositioning wings, smoothing tiny scales, and stabilizing the creature without force. The hatchling trembled initially, then slowly responded. Its wings flexed more evenly. Its claws gripped with confidence. Its eyes blinked, tracking the human's movements, learning to trust. Kelith, standing on his elevated dais, narrowed his eyes. He had expected failure, humiliation, and perhaps tears. Instead, he watched as the hatchling lifted slightly from the platform, stabilizing in midair under the guidance of a human's hands. A murmur ran through the court. Shock, disbelief, and finally awe. The hatchling flapped with increasing confidence. With Corrin's careful adjustments, it hovered, then glided in a short, controlled arc. The court gasped. Imperial guards looked at one another in disbelief. Even Kelith's stern gaze softened slightly, curiosity replacing anger. "You?" the Emperor said slowly, his voice measured but intense. "This human has accomplished what my hatchling could not alone?" Corrin looked up, calm and focused. "It is not about power or rank," he said simply. "It's about understanding, patience, and gentle guidance. Even a hatchling deemed useless can rise with the right care." The court erupted with whispers, some skeptical, others admiring. The Emperor remained silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on his heir. The hatchling hovered steadily now, wings beating evenly, confidence growing with each arc. The creature's amber eyes gleamed, not with fear, but with recognition and trust in the human who had dared to act. Corrin stood, brushing his hands carefully, showing no fear despite the eyes of the entire empire upon him. "Sometimes, the smallest, weakest, or most mocked can teach the greatest lesson," he said. Kelith's gaze lingered, a mixture of astonishment, contemplation, and something unfamiliar: respect. The court had expected humiliation, yet they had witnessed a triumph. The human barber had shattered assumptions, challenged imperial pride, and revealed the potential hidden beneath perceived weakness. The hatchling, once trembling and mocked, now perched confidently on the edge of the platform, nuzzling Corrin's hand in a gesture that conveyed trust and gratitude. Aurelia, the dragon mother, hovered at the back of the hall, wings folded, her golden eyes gleaming with approval. She had chosen wisely, and now the consequences were clear. This human, ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in courage and skill, had changed everything. As the suns dipped below the horizon, painting the palace in shades of violet and crimson, Corrin quietly left the hall, carrying only the satisfaction of a job well done and the knowledge that he had made a difference in a world built on power, pride, and fear. The hatchling had learned to fly, the court had learned humility, and the empire would never forget the human who had dared to challenge assumptions. Because sometimes, a barber with courage, patience, and understanding could achieve what emperors, generals, and sorcerers could not. The next morning, the imperial palace was quieter than usual, though tension lingered like a storm cloud. Whispers circulated through the hallways. The hatchling, once mocked and dismissed, had flown under the guidance of a human, a mere barber of all things. Many considered the story impossible, an affront to centuries of imperial tradition. Yet the news spread, carried by servants, scribes, and couriers, until even the distant provinces murmured in disbelief. Inside the observation hall, Corrin arrived early, carrying a small satchel filled with his tools, oils, and carefully prepared herbal salves. He had been invited, reluctantly, by the Emperor himself, though Kelith's tone had been curt and skeptical. "You may enter," the Emperor said, voice deep and measured. "But know this, if the hatchling fails again under your guidance, your life is forfeit. We will not tolerate mistakes." Corrin bowed lightly. "Understood, Your Majesty." Despite the threat, he was calm. Fear had never guided his hands, and the hatchling's trust depended on steadiness, not panic. The hatchling stirred as he approached. Its wings flexed weakly, claws scrabbling against the polished platform. The creature's eyes, wide and anxious, met Corrin's. A subtle rumble vibrated from deep within its throat. Nervousness, perhaps, but also recognition. "Steady," Corrin murmured softly. He crouched, his hands hovering carefully, almost reverently, around the hatchling. "I'll guide you." Nothing forced, nothing rushed. Just patience. Aurelia, the dragon mother, hovered in the corner of the hall. Her golden eyes were sharp, vigilant, and unyielding. Though she had approved of Corrin yesterday, she remained cautious. Trust, she seemed to convey, was not absolute. It was earned anew with each passing moment. Corrin began by examining the hatchling's wings, muscles, and joints. He adjusted the alignment of the tiny bones, gently massaging stiffness from the creature's shoulders. His hands moved with precision, informed by decades of experience tending humans and animals alike. The hatchling responded immediately, trembling initially but gradually relaxing under his touch. The emperor watched from his dais, his amber eyes narrowed. The court murmured, some openly skeptical. "A barber cannot teach a dragon to fly," one advisor whispered. "It is folly." Yet Corin ignored them. "Breathe," he whispered to the hatchling. "Stretch, lift, trust yourself. Trust me." Slowly, the hatchling lifted, hovering a few inches above the platform. Its wings flapped in a trembling rhythm, steadied by Corin's steady hands. The court gasped. Even the emperor, long accustomed to controlling every situation, could not hide the flicker of curiosity, and something else, something like grudging respect. "You are guiding it," Keleth said slowly. "By touch." Corin nodded. "Not by force, your majesty. By observation, care, and understanding. Every creature has limits. Every creature responds to attention. Push too hard and it falters. Guide too gently and it grows." The hatchling flapped higher, then glided in a short arc across the hall. Its confidence increased with every pass, and with it, the whispers in the court shifted from mockery to astonishment. Aurelia exhaled a warm plume, vibrating softly in approval. Corin continued, teaching the hatchling to adjust its balance midair, to coordinate its claws with its wings, and to correct its posture instinctively. Each adjustment was minor, almost imperceptible, but cumulatively, the hatchling's flight transformed from awkward fluttering to steady hovering. "Remarkable, Seraphine," a court scholar, whispered to a nearby guard. "I never thought I'd see a human guide a dragon so precisely. It's beyond study. It's understanding." By midday, the hatchling was flying independently, though still cautiously. Corin stepped back, allowing it to hover freely, while Aurelia watched with pride and vigilance. The emperor, silent for much of the demonstration, finally inclined his head. "You have accomplished what I deemed impossible," Keleth said, voice low but firm. "A human, an unranked, ordinary human, has done what even our most skilled tutors could not. This is unprecedented." Corin bowed again, calm and respectful. "It is not about rank or title, your majesty. It is about patience, observation, and the willingness to act when others would do nothing." The court fell silent. Some were visibly ashamed, others intrigued, but all were forced to reckon with the reality. A human had proven that even the most vulnerable, mocked, and underestimated creature could rise with proper guidance. As the hatchling landed on the platform, trembling but upright, it nuzzled Corin's hand. A small, fragile gesture that carried immense weight. Aurelia's eyes glimmered with approval, and even Keleth could not look away. The emperor's expression was unreadable, but beneath the layers of pride and authority, there was respect. "This hatchling is capable," the emperor admitted slowly. "Not because it is naturally strong, but because it was guided, trained, cared for." Corin smiled faintly. "Strength alone does not create survival. Guidance and care allow potential to flourish." By evening, the news had spread beyond the palace. The story of the human barber and the emperor's hatchling traveled through the empire like wildfire, igniting awe and quiet rebellion against assumptions about weakness and worth. In the quiet of his shop later, Corin reflected on the day. He had faced an entire empire, judged as insignificant, yet his hands and heart had proved more powerful than intimidation or scorn. The hatchling's small wings, once clumsy and fragile, now bore a new confidence, an enduring symbol that care, courage, and understanding could surpass rank, power, and prejudice. For the first time, Corin realized that even a single human, armed only with knowledge, patience, and courage, could challenge the assumptions of an entire empire, and change the life of a dragon, the perception of an emperor, and the course of history itself. The hatchling curled against him, tired but steady, and Corin whispered softly, "Tomorrow we fly farther. Step by step we rise together." And in that moment, the ordinary barber became extraordinary, not through power, magic, or influence, but through the simple, profound act of believing in the impossible. The following morning, the imperial palace was alive with a tension that was both expectant and uneasy. Word of the human barber's success with the hatchling had spread overnight like wildfire, reaching even the highest chambers of the emperor's court. Some were skeptical, others resentful, and a few whispered with awe about the audacity of a mere human changing the destiny of the empire's heir. Inside the observation hall, Corin arrived carrying only his satchel and an air of quiet determination. The hatchling, perched nervously on the platform, flapped its small wings tentatively. Its scales glimmered faintly in the morning light, a pale contrast to the gleaming halls around it. Aurelia hovered nearby, her golden eyes fixed on both the hatchling and the human, radiating the protective vigilance of a mother who had already witnessed the impossibility of yesterday made reality. Today, Corin began softly, we learn to trust more than just wings. We learn to trust ourselves. You are stronger than you think. The only obstacle is fear, and I will help you overcome it. The hatchling blinked, its small heart racing. Its wings twitched in anticipation, sensing the presence of the human who had shown patience, skill, and understanding the day before. Slowly, it began to lift off the platform, flapping unevenly but steadily. Corin's hands hovered nearby, ready to guide if necessary, though his presence alone seemed to instill confidence. Outside the hall, the court watched in stunned silence. The human, a barber with no official title, stood in defiance of centuries of hierarchy and prejudice. He had no weapons, no magic, no authority, only patience, intelligence, and skill. And yet, the hatchling now hovered before them, balanced and confident, an undeniable testament to his ability. Kelitha's amber eyes narrowed. The emperor had expected chaos, humiliation, or failure. Instead, he witnessed mastery born of observation, careful touch, and genuine understanding. His court whispered anxiously, some showing concern for their own reputations, others shifting uncomfortably as they realized the human had succeeded where they had doubted. Corin encouraged the hatchling, adjusting its wings with gentle movements. Balance, breathe, trust your own strength. The hatchling flexed its claws against the platform, then pushed off, soaring in a smooth arc across the hall. Its flight was no longer clumsy. It was deliberate, guided, and confident. Impossible, muttered one advisor. No hatchling has flown like this without tutors of the highest rank or centuries of training. Corin ignored the whispers. He focused solely on the hatchling, watching its body respond to encouragement and guidance. Each flap of the wings built strength, confidence, and trust. Aurelia's rumble of approval vibrated through the room, a subtle but powerful acknowledgement of his skill. Kelith finally spoke, his voice cutting through the murmurs. Human, you have done what my tutors, my advisors, and even my personal attendants could not. Explain how you achieved this. Corin's gaze met the emperor's, steady and unflinching. Your Majesty, it is not about power, magic, or rank. It is about understanding, observing what is weak, adjusting gently, and giving the creature the courage to act. Even a hatchling deemed useless can thrive when fear is replaced by trust. The emperor's jaw tightened. He had spent decades enforcing hierarchy, demanding obedience, and instilling fear. Yet here, in his own court, a human had achieved more than any of his advisors through sheer patience, courage, and empathy. The thought was unsettling, but he could not deny its truth. The hatchling, encouraged by the calm and precise guidance, began performing small maneuvers, hovering, banking midair, landing softly. Each success was a visible shift in confidence, a transformation from a trembling, mocked creature into a capable young dragon. The court watched, astonished, as centuries of assumptions about weakness and capability crumbled before their eyes. Observe, Corin murmured to the hatchling, his hands close but not intrusive. You are strong. You can do this, one step at a time. The human's words, quiet yet firm, resonated far more deeply than the shouting, judgmental voices of the court. It was not authority or rank that guided the hatchling. It was belief, understanding, and patient instruction. Aurelia nudged the hatchling gently, amplifying the effect of Corin's guidance. With her subtle encouragement, the hatchling executed its first controlled hover in a broad arc, landing gracefully on the platform. A collective gasp escaped the room, and even Kelitha's face betrayed a flicker of astonishment. "Remarkable," the Emperor admitted softly, almost to himself. "This human has done what I thought impossible." Corin bowed slightly. "Strength is not always in claws or fire, Your Majesty. True strength is in knowing how to guide, to teach, and to care. Even the smallest, weakest, or most underestimated can rise with proper support." The court fell silent, forced to confront the undeniable lesson unfolding before them. Ability and potential were not measured solely by inherent power, lineage, or status. Courage, patience, and understanding could shape outcomes that brute force could never achieve. Over the next hours, Corin continued to work with the hatchling, gradually increasing the difficulty of exercises. It soared higher, turned more sharply, and tested its wings with growing confidence. Each success was reinforced with gentle guidance and calm reassurance, teaching the hatchling that even failure was an opportunity to learn. By evening, the hatchling was flying in deliberate patterns, executing precise maneuvers that impressed even the most skeptical of court members. Aurelia hovered proudly, her massive wings glinting in the warm glow of the twin setting suns. The Emperor remained silent, deep in thought, recognizing that his court, and perhaps even his empire, had been taught an invaluable lesson in humility and perspective. Corin gathered his tools quietly and stepped back. The hatchling landed gently, nuzzling his hand in gratitude. The Emperor's voice, once severe and unyielding, finally cut through the silence. "Human, you have not only guided my heir but also reminded me that greatness is not measured by lineage or intimidation alone. You may remain in the palace for further instruction and guidance. Your skill is needed." Corin inclined his head, careful not to overstate his triumph. "It is an honor, Your Majesty. The hatchling's strength is its own. I am merely the hand that helps it realize it." The court erupted into whispers again, some incredulous, others in admiration. The human barber had done what none had imagined possible. He had restored confidence to the Emperor's heir, earned the grudging respect of an entire imperial court, and reminded the Empire that courage and understanding were forms of power that even rulers could not command. That night, as the twin suns set behind the crystalline spires, Corin reflected on the day. A hatchling once deemed useless now soared confidently, guided by patience, care, and the belief of a human who refused to accept impossibility. The Empire, rigid in its hierarchy and assumptions, had witnessed the extraordinary. The triumph of wisdom, empathy, and action over pride, fear, and prejudice. For the first time in his life, Corin understood that ordinary beings, armed only with knowledge, courage, and patience, could change destinies, even the destiny of an empire. And the hatchling, once trembling and mocked, now looked toward the future with wings strong enough to carry it anywhere. Step by step, flight by flight, the impossible had become possible, and nothing would ever be the same again. The morning sun cast long, crystalline shadows across the palace terraces, the twin suns glinting off the spires like molten gold. Inside the observation hall, anticipation hung thick in the air. Word of the hatchling's progress had traveled faster than any human could move, through whispers, scribes' notes, and the astonished murmurs of the court. What had begun as a spectacle of potential failure had transformed into a living demonstration of patience, guidance, and courage. Corin arrived early, his satchel in hand and a calm resolve in his eyes. The hatchling, once trembling and dismissed as worthless, now perched on the platform with wings slightly extended, radiating nervous but budding confidence. Aurelia hovered nearby, her massive form casting a protective shadow, while her golden eyes followed every subtle motion of the human barber. "Today," Corin began softly, kneeling beside the hatchling, "we push just a little further, nothing forced, just practice, precision, and trust. You can do this. I'll be right here." The hatchling's wings twitched instinctively, flexing in preparation. its amber eyes, large and round, locked onto Corrin's steady gaze, drawing courage from his unwavering calm. With a cautious push off the platform, it lifted into the air, wobbling slightly at first, but gradually gaining balance. Aurelia exhaled a low, approving rumble. The court, which had gathered once more under imperial order, watched in silent awe. Whispers of skepticism had all but vanished, replaced by astonishment and cautious hope. Even Kelith, the emperor, leaned forward from his dais, amber eyes fixed on the tiny creature that had defied expectation. Corrin guided the hatchling through a series of small maneuvers, adjusting its posture, lightly nudging its wings, and providing verbal reassurance. Balance, lift, steady. You've got this, he murmured. Slowly, the hatchling executed a short, arcing flight, landing smoothly on the platform. Unbelievable, whispered one advisor, hand pressed to his mouth. No hatchling has flown like that in the history of the Empire. The Emperor's voice, deep and deliberate, cut through the murmurs. This human has accomplished what centuries of tutors and trainers could not. Step forward, human, and demonstrate again. Corrin complied without hesitation. He approached the hatchling, crouched, and allowed it to take off again. This time, under his guidance, the hatchling completed a series of small loops, each flight more precise than the last. Aurelia hovered at the edge of the hall, her eyes glowing with pride and approval. "Observe, Your Majesty," Corrin said calmly. "It is not mere power or magic that guides success. It is patience, understanding, and the courage to act when others fear. Every flap of its wings is an opportunity to learn, every landing a lesson in confidence. Even the smallest and weakest can rise if properly guided." The court was silent, absorbing the truth of his words. The hatchling flapped higher, then dipped smoothly, following Corrin's guidance like a student learning under a master's careful eye. Whispers of amazement and incredulity spread throughout the hall. Kelith studied the scene, his usual pride tempered by the undeniable reality before him. A human guiding my heir? Demonstrating such mastery and understanding? This challenges everything we have assumed about strength, lineage, and authority. Corrin's gaze remained steady, his hands hovering near the hatchling, guiding but never controlling. "Greatness," he said quietly, "is not always measured in power or birthright. Sometimes it is measured in patience, in courage, and in the willingness to act when everyone else stands idle. Even a hatchling deemed useless can become extraordinary with guidance." The hatchling, encouraged by Corrin and subtly assisted by Aurelia, began performing small arcs independently. Its wings flexed and rotated with precision, landing each time more gracefully than before. The court members, many of whom had spent centuries enforcing hierarchy and power, were forced to confront a lesson they had never expected. True strength is often invisible, hidden in patience, empathy, and careful action. By midday, the hatchling soared in a controlled loop, landing smoothly on Corrin's extended arm. Aurelia nudged it with her nose, as if to affirm the young dragon's confidence. Kelith's voice, firm yet thoughtful, addressed the room. "The human has taught the hatchling not only to fly, but also to trust, to believe, and to overcome doubt. Perhaps we, too, could learn from this lesson." Corrin allowed a faint smile. "Trust is the foundation of all growth, Your Majesty. Guidance allows potential to flourish. Fear and judgment only hinder it." The court, previously rigid and critical, now watched in quiet reflection. Some bowed their heads in shame, recognizing how assumptions had clouded their judgment. Others looked at Corrin with newfound respect, astonished that a single human had altered their understanding of possibility. As the sun began to set, the twin golden rays reflected across the hall's crystalline surfaces. The hatchling hovered triumphantly, wings steady, eyes bright and confident. It circled Corrin once before landing gently on the platform, nuzzling his hand, a gesture of trust, gratitude, and recognition. Aurelia's approving rumble filled the hall, reverberating like a soft declaration of victory. Kelith finally addressed the human, his tone measured. You have done what few could, what many would have deemed impossible. Your presence here, your guidance, has changed the course of this hatchling's life and the understanding of my court. You shall remain here to continue this instruction for the benefit of the Empire." Corrin bowed lightly. "It is an honor, Your Majesty. The hatchling's success belongs to it alone. I am merely the hand that helps it see its own strength." The court erupted in subdued murmurs, some incredulous, some admiring. The lesson was clear. Even an ordinary human, armed with knowledge, courage, and patience, could achieve what others deemed impossible. That evening, as the palace halls cooled under the fading sunlight, Corrin stepped back from the platform. The hatchling perched proudly, wings slightly extended, breathing evenly, a symbol of transformation and potential. Aurelia's golden eyes glimmered, reflecting both approval and recognition. Corrin realized that the Empire had changed, subtly but irreversibly. A hatchling once dismissed as useless now soared confidently, guided by the steady hands and unwavering courage of a human. The court, once rigid and unquestioning, had learned a lesson in humility and respect, and the emperor, whose pride had never been easily tempered, had seen that wisdom, patience, and care could achieve what power alone could not. Step by step, flight by flight, the impossible had become reality. And in that realization, the Empire and all who witnessed it would never see humans, dragons, or potential in the same way again.